System Philosophy, Part 20, Equilibrium Conflict. Well, as you may already know, this is my 20th episode of my System Philosophy topics. Well, for those who doesn't know, well, I have been busy because my dad came back to the United States. Well, we are both philosophers, but we research on different subjects. You know, he have his research, I have mine. We never cross research together. So he have his own personal research, and I have my own. Okay. Well, for those who doesn't know about my dad is a successful businessman who earned enough money to retire at age of 35. But we had this discussion about philosophical equilibrium. As the side information is this, my dad is a huge womanizer. His mastery at philosophy and business side of society made him pretty popular among women. He basically attracts nearly every woman he ever really come across with. Living with him back to like 10 years ago, he would have different women with him all the time. Obviously, my mom didn't like it, but my mom lives in United States. Okay, back when I was living with my dad, obviously, my mom doesn't know much of it. Then here is me. I'm all the way around my dad. I dedicate my life to the advancement of system philosophy. However, my desire to dissemble everything I see into absolute pattern made me nearly untouchable in most of the regards. I'm the one who recreated the definition of love, in which you can read more about it in my online lecture. Because I am an extreme scientific philosopher. I never believe that there is much to emotion other than formulated calculations. And it is true. You know, for value system, you melt down everything into value sets so that you can solve the problem more precisely, accurately. You know, that's what you need to do. And later that year, I concluded the definition for human emotion. I created calculative social engineering, where I put up a real fight to my formulas. I actually decided to get into a relationship without actually being it, but simulating it outward as my experiment to test the theory. So on the script it says, obviously, I'm the one who created calculative social engineering. The calculative social engineering is basically a concept where you accelerate trust between your subject and you, so that you can get what you want in an absolute scale. It is a very, very important theory to my value system, because it basically proves the fact that human emotion can be calculated. You know, it's like a computer. You can actually calculate it if you have the variables, accurate variables. So in order to test this experiment, so I had this girl as my experimental subject. The theory worked, and our relationship grew exponentially. So much that this girl, who already have a boyfriend for 3 years, but it didn't prevent it from getting further. You know, so our relationship was pretty artificial, because I pretty much accelerated exponentially. You know, typically you wouldn't get a girl to strip for you in a month, you know, like she wouldn't know you, but with calculative social engineering, it was achieved easily, even though she already have a boyfriend. And for your information, she's very shy, and for a shy person to do that is a huge thing. For information, yeah. I don't know, for you, I mean, it's not gonna be achieved easily, because without the concept and ideology behind it, it can't be achieved. It's really hard. For me to first testing the experiment on her, I pretty much threw everything. I had to think about it. Mastery a lot is a very complex, a very complex experiment, because you know how complex human brains are, human concept. Everyone, even a homeless person, their mentality is extremely complex, and you have to account for every single exception, and that's what it frustrates me. So yeah, I was happy that I concluded this subject. But here's a equilibrium conflict. I had to cut off the relationship because the experiment was completed. However, I felt like our relationship was positive. I obviously enjoyed it. I'm like a scientist who fell in love with his experiment. But the problem is that I made a promise to myself that no matter what kind of experiment I do, I will never feel anything personally, but for the research. So I was kind of stuck within two circles. One circle where I could seek for the relationship and be happy. The other circle was to terminate and conclude everything of the experiment. However, the catch point is that system philosophy is my life. It saved my life, and therefore it is my life, and I am to be considered one of the system philosophy. Yeah, I often said like I myself is a system philosophy because I am the system philosophy. I reflect system philosophy. So system philosophy holds greater potential, even though it doesn't provide concurrent happiness for most of the people, which concludes my dad, who fell for the concurrent happiness, such as money, love, family, and etc. For me, I have much uniquely defined paths, which made me unpredictable, even as a human being. If you ask, what was your decision? Well, the truth is that the reality of traditional and scientific definition works together. So I am in a hybrid of two paths, but it's not absolute because I personally currently doesn't give a shit to this subject when I got more important research at hand. This is outside of my script, obviously. For me, I don't really care. For me, philosophy research is more than enough to fulfill my life. It's a huge research. It's probably gonna take me next 10-20 years for me to push through system philosophy to mainstream. It's a huge thing at my hands. You might ask Harvard, why don't you just, be easy, You're computer science. Why don't you just get your major, get a job, get a family, live happy ever after? But the problem is that I believe that path is too mainstream. I personally hate to be walking the same paths as everyone else. I don't like that. That's unlike me. I want to walk on a path that is more uniquely defined, and by uniquely defined is really, you might not say, how you're just being a fucking stupid idiot. Why would you walk in different paths that, do you have the value for it? The answer is actually yes. I have the value set that is different from everyone else. So I do have the value to actually progress. Oh yeah, but by having the value to progress in that regard doesn't necessarily make me weak in that regard. That is something I have to understand, is that I tend to combine traditional and scientific side of things. So much that I would be a normal human being, but it's just with certain philosophical interpretation that makes me sometimes different, sometimes similar. But yeah, that's a little bit too long to talk about. So that concludes this topic.